The Stage Door Show, celebrating the independent artist. Hosted by Dave Hondel.
Welcome to the Stage Door Show tonight. This is Dave Hondel. Tonight's guest you've seen on major projects like Legends, Perception, Sex and the City, Survivor, Bob Marley, One Love, and many more spanning over 2 decades. And we're lucky she's with us tonight. Welcome to the show, Miss Sundra Oakley. Sundra, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, when did you want to be an actress? I mean, when did that bug hit you, and when did you discover the talent?
So I was 13 when I first realized that I wanted to be an actor. I had been a dancer all my life. Being a kid and you do tap ballet and jazz classes, and I really can't tell you exactly what struck the chord of acting that made me say that's what I want to do. But I remember at 13 that's when I said, I want to be an actress.
Yeah, I mean, and you've done so many big shows over the years. And what was your big, your big break in the business? Like, what was your first big project?
So for film and TV, my first big project I'd say was Sex and the City, the series.
Wow, being your first big, TV project, walking on the set for the first time, that must have been amazing.
Oh, yes. I was quite nervous. I'm not going to lie. But I have to tell you, the 4 ladies were all so nice. I've always said it. They were so sweet, so welcoming. I felt welcomed. I didn't feel like, oh, they were just on this other level than me. They were just really cool.
Yeah. And then, being on Survivor too, this is one question I've always wanted to ask, people that are on reality shows like that. And because I know there's a lot of things that happen when the cameras aren't rolling, but, that show, you have to have a lot of strategy, I guess, and you don't know who to trust. And, and you made it to the final 4, so you did very, very well. So being on that show, what was that experience like being out there? I mean, especially on one of the biggest TV franchises in history. I mean, how was that experience? That must have been amazing too.
It was something else. I always say this, first of all, Survivor was very much independent of my acting life. It's not an acting credit. It's like, I tell people, it's like being on a game show. I did that for personal reasons that I needed at that time, not anything to do with being on TV or it will help my career. In fact, I thought it might hurt but I needed it at that time, what it offered. That being said, it was an incredible experience. I'm very grateful for it. It was rough. It was hard. There is nothing given to you behind the scenes, outside of dire medical attention. You are getting your food, you are boiling your water, you're doing all those kinds of things. So it's hard. It's hard.
Well, I mean, that must have been a bonding experience with the other cast members. I mean, do you still keep in touch with any of the cast members to this day, or?
Oh, yes, there's some that, we haven't maybe spoken in a while outside of maybe social media. Life starts lifing and, people have families and it's really hard. I mean, you can't keep in touch with everybody, but especially if we're connected via social media, you get to see little glimpses of their lives and what they're doing work-wise with their families. So that's really sweet. But definitely, there are some that I remained close with, and I know, like, if we were to run into each other today, it would just be like, "Oh my God, how are you?" and what have you. So yeah, so I'm very grateful for the people that I met.
And watching some of your work, it's what caught me was, I mean, just you're such a amazing actress, when you're I mean, I saw a scene with Morris Chestnut, and I mean, how is it working with people like that? And what's your process to get into that kind of role? Because I mean, you played a lot of different roles, but I mean, what is your process to get into that space? Because everything I've seen is just amazing. So how do you get into that space? What's your process like?
Oh, well, thank you. I really very much appreciate that. I approach each role I do that all the same. I mean, you read it, you want to find out what is the essence of this character. I listen to my gut a lot and see, okay, what do I naturally feel, instinctually feel? Of course, you do the technical things of breaking down a scene, breaking down a script, and seeing what role is that character play in here, and you play. So it's a lot of discovery, internal discovery, and playing around and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I've learned to be okay with trying and failing, and like, let me just go out there. Some people, they did that very early on in their career. I was always afraid, and just wanting to do it right.
Yeah.
To do it right. But now I'm okay with playing and going a little left field and seeing what comes out of it. But you start with the material that you're given, and you break that down and say, okay, what is my role here? What is my job in this scene to do? And then of course, if you have something bigger, you have to think of several scenes that you have to do. So it's pretty much the same process. I sit down with my script and I read again, I put it down, I walk away, I come back and I read it again to see if something feels better. I'll sleep on it, and then something comes up to you, that you're like, oh, okay, I didn't think of this yesterday. Yeah.
Having that chemistry on set with somebody, a lot of times, I mean, I don't know how much time you have to meet with, especially if you're a co-star in a show where you're maybe doing an episode or two, or maybe three. I mean, you don't have a lot of time, I guess, to maybe work with the actors that you're in a scene with. So how do you get that chemistry? I mean, because on screen, it looks like you've known each other for years. I mean, how do you get into that kind of space with the person you're working with?
Well, that's where the acting comes in. You just that's your job. You have to just connect. You have to connect, and hopefully you're with somebody who is open enough to take you in and let you take them in, and then you go from there. And that's why a lot of people think it's easy what we do as actors, and then you realize it's not as easy, but because it may look it, but there was work put in to make it look like that. And when you're a guest star, for example, on a show, you're not getting rehearsal time. You're probably meeting your co-star as you're coming to set to film.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, you may have a rehearsal,
Sure,
or you may do a blocking, and then you go and you change and you get into hair and makeup. But you're not getting this extensive rehearsal period, and I've had situations where the most amount of time I've had to work with my co-star is, say, we're doing a blocking rehearsal, so we're in our regular clothes, but we're just figuring out where we are. Okay, the director's telling us, okay, we're going here, and this is usually for TV. And and then it has been, okay, when you're in hair, makeup, wardrobe, go to set, and then you're meeting everybody. Hi, Dave, nice to meet you. Okay, now we're doing our scene together.
wow.
Yeah.
See, for my listeners, new actors out there, talk about the work that goes into this, because I think sometimes people think it's the glamorous life, and you just go do your set, or you do your scene and go home. Some of these scenes take hours and hours to do. You might see a minute scene that might take 2-3 days to film. So talk to our listeners out there that think this is easy, because it's not.
Yeah, well, I always tell people it's not all the glamour that you think it is.
Yeah.
Don't believe all the Instagram squares.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember, that's very much a curated existence, as well as, maybe more magazines of yesteryear, if I'm not aging myself by saying a magazine. But
right.
yeah,
That's
right.
how
Like
I grew up too. Magazines,
a magazine.
cassette tapes. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's especially with TV, I'll say, you, depending on how many scenes you have, depending on who your director is, how much time they have, you could be filming a scene for a few hours. You
Right.
could, and then you may have some sets where they move fast. So you better come to set knowing what you're doing, having your lines memorized, having at a minimum having your lines memorized. There's no excuse to ever show up on a job and not have your lines memorized. That's like the basic. So it's grueling work. And then let's say you have a heavily emotional scene and you have to repeat it over and over again because you have your wide, you have your close up, you have your reverse. So it's not on you, but it's on the other character, and you want to still give, and enough so that they have something to go off of and feed off of. It's a very technical medium. It's a
Right.
very technical medium, and having to adjust your performance depending on if it's a wide shot, and then if it's very intimate, you don't want to have the same kind of bobbing and weaving that you may need to have for a wider angle to get the same message across.
Right.
So yes, film and TV, it's a different art than say theater in terms
Yeah.
of technicality. So, I always tell people watch, you can see you just watching TV, if from a different perspective of just entertainment or for technique, it's worth it to do, and it's important to do.
Do you find your stage experience helps you with the TV and film being, having to do the lines and if you make a mistake, you have to cover for it, or you have to think on your feet, you have to do improv almost. So do
Mhm.
you find that theater got you ready for TV and film, or it helps you with it?
I think so. I studied theater at NYU. That was my major. And theaters, I love it. I love that training ground. I feel like where you can, you get muddy, you get your hands in the clay and you just play and you figure and you do things. And sometimes when you have a performance, you have to go with it. You don't have you're not afforded the luxury of saying, cut. Oh, sorry, I messed up that line. You better run and go. You have to make it work,
Right.
right? So I do think it was a wonderful training ground, and I'm so grateful that I have that. And I love the stage, right? And I've studied improv as well, at Second City. So that's
Oh,
great.
wow. You did
All,
Second City? Wow, that's great. I
yeah,
love
so
Second City.
yeah, I loved it too. What a great training
Yeah.
ground. Love that. So, I always tell actors like learn, go take a course here, go to these different places, get these different tools in your tool belt, just I think the more you know, the better. And then you take what works for you, and then you find out, oh, I don't like this. Okay. I've done that in my theater training where certain techniques worked for me better than others. And others I'm like, no, I can live my whole
Right.
life and not do that. And that's fine. It will work
Sure.
for somebody else.
Yeah, that's well said. Big Hero 6, this is something that fascinates me too, because I love voice work. I love watching shows and listening to the actors, kind of bring the character to life. And so when you're in front of a microphone and you don't have an audience there, you have a director or somebody working, doing the engineering. Well, I mean, how was that experience being a voice actor as well? Because on Big Hero 6, one of the is great, big project. So how was it for you acting in front of a microphone? I mean, you have to really kind of be that part, but you're not working against somebody else. You might be dropped into a scene, but you're kind of there by yourself, right? For the most part.
Well, for Big Hero 6, there were a couple of us, which
Oh,
was really
okay.
a few of us, which was really nice. And yes, you bring the same energy as if it was just your face.
Right. Exactly.
You as the individual were performing in front of the camera, and you see you may uh have your body is in it,
Right.
so
You have to
you
act it
can
out, right?
contort and do all the kinds of things that you need to do according to what the scene entails and calls for. So it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is auditioning, because, of course, a lot of our listeners do auditions a lot of times. And, so from your experience, have you ever had a crazy audition story or one that's memorable that you can share?
Hmm. God, I don't know if I've blocked most of them out.
Oh,
Oh my goodness. I don't have a crazy audition story, to be honest with you.
yeah,
I haven't had anything, unless honestly I have blocked it out because, I mean, you think of how many years I've been doing this, how many
exactly.
auditions that I've been doing. I mean,
Hundreds
now,
and hundreds. Yeah.
oh my gosh, I don't even know if I could count them after all these years. Um, Ooh. crazy
Or did you have one that you maybe
unusual.
thought you weren't going to get, and then they called you and they gave you the part?
Yes. I had an audition for this show called Being Mary Jane.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
for sure. Yeah.
yes, with Gabrielle Union.
Yep.
And it's interesting because the character was British, so I had to speak with a British accent.
Oh, okay.
I said, okay, I'm fairly good with accents. That's one of my things. But I went to the audition. This is when we were still in person, and I saw a couple of British actresses. So I walked in there and I said, I'm not getting this.
That's their
Not
native language, right? Or
getting
dialect. Yeah.
accent. I'm not getting this. So I literally walked in. I don't even know if I laughed out loud, but I just said, okay, let me just go in the room and get this over with and just have fun with it.
Yeah.
And so when I got it, I think I laughed again because I said, really? You mean I beat those other actresses who I know are British? You know, so that was a fun one. That was funny to me.
Yeah, that sounds fun. A lot of
Yeah.
fun. The other thing I was going to ask you about is boxing, and yeah, you enjoy boxing, I understand.
So I do more kung fu,
Oh,
which is
kung fu.
like Chinese
Oh yeah,
boxing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, but in our school where I trained, it's a very multifaceted
Sure,
expression of kung fu, and yes, so boxing is a part of it, with kung fu being Chinese boxing.
sure,
So yeah, I love to watch that more. I mean, more so than maybe other than the traditional boxing as you know it,
sure.
but the skill, I love the skill and the sport of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, me too. I used to box when I was a kid. That's why I asked, because it was I ended up getting too many headaches and I had to quit. But I do love the sport. Absolutely. I also understand that, is your birthday January 2nd? I'm 31st of December, so fellow Capricorn.
Capricorn. Hi,
Yeah.
Capricorn.
So do you get into astrology at all, or do you believe in that?
I do
Oh,
very
you
much.
do. Okay. So
Very
what?
much.
So talk about Capricorns, because I don't even know what I don't. I think I'm kind of chill. I don't know. Is it Capricorn?
Yeah, so we are, first of all, we're the Benjamin Button of the zodiac. So we tend
Oh,
to be these old souls when we're little kids.
yes, that's me.
We tend to be old souls, and then the older we get, it's like the younger we get. It's like people tend to be like, "Oh, you're so lively," and
Yeah.
what have you. And I've definitely seen that in my life, to the point where I've even forgotten. I've been asked my birthday, like at the doctor's office,
Oh, yeah.
and I have to be like, hold on, and I'm thinking they're gonna think I'm lying, but I'm not. I just honestly forgot,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we're the Benjamin Button of the zodiac.
Okay.
Uh, we are, the goat, right? So
Yeah.
we climb up that mountain. We make things happen. Capricorns make things happen.
It's true.
We may take a rest on the side of the mountain and cry and have a little nervous breakdown and say, I can't take this anymore. And then we wipe our tears and then we continue
Get back
on.
to it. Yeah.
Like we don't fall apart to the point where, we're incapable of doing anything. We definitely make things happen. I like to say we're the undercover cool of the zodiac, you
Oh, for
know.
sure.
People tend to think, oh, Leos, but it's like we're the ones that you have to like take a second look at, which I
Right.
like, which I
Yeah,
like.
so sometimes people, because sometimes when I come across as people think I'm serious, but I'm really not. Sometimes the look on my face is serious, but they take me wrong sometimes. And then when they
Yeah,
get to know me, they know I'm a fun-loving person.
yeah,
But
yeah,
you gotta
yeah,
gotta break through that first wall first,
yeah,
So that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But if you want something done, you get a Capricorn.
absolutely,
We're
100%.
ambitious. We're ambitious. We have high expectations and dreams and
Hmm.
aspirations. You know,
Visionaries, right?
yes,
Yes,
yes.
for sure.
And it's like we expect to live a nice quality of life.
Right. Correct. I love that because
Yeah.
I don't get into it too much, but as I get older, I'm starting to understand that a lot of that makes sense.
Yep.
What kind of advice can you give a new actor, just somebody just getting started? Like, what's your main piece of advice for somebody with all your years of experience?
I would first ask a new actor, okay, do you know why you want to do this?
Right.
all right, and really sit within yourself to see why is it that you want to do this. And then I would say, study the hell out of what you're doing as an actor, but now in 2024, it is so different than when I started, right? Even just maybe 8 years ago, I think the business is so different. And it's funny because I just did I was a keynote speaker at a Creative Careers Expo in Jamaica.
I was going to bring that up. Absolutely. That's great. I
Yeah.
saw that on
And
your Instagram. Yeah.
oh yeah, and and I told the students, I said, study your craft, right? Study it because there's a beauty in being informed. There's a beauty in knowing what you're doing, of saying like of feeling confident in what you're doing because you have the knowledge. And I understand it is part of maybe modern culture to just have very surface level understanding of anything. And people are being called experts and geniuses for basically anything at this point, right? But I kind of am old school where I like to know that I have the knowledge and the information. And of course, there's a balance to it, right? Like you don't want to feel like you have to, go to the Himalayas for 20 years before you can be an
Yeah.
actor.
Right.
Um, but being in this industry in particular, where so many lines are being, the lines are kind of being, I don't know, not, they're muddled, like you have actors who are writers and producers and directors. Study every aspect of the business. I think it's important. Like if you're on set, I like to I like to get curious, see, knowing what the a PA is doing, knowing what a grip is doing, knowing, how everything kind of works into the fabric of this production. I think now more than ever, we should know that. We should, just to have even a little bit of understanding.
Yeah, and one of the things I think that what that leads to is people getting into producing eventually and understanding the full aspect of the whole set. I think is important, and it's important, like you said, for the actors to understand where the lighting goes and why is the lighting there as opposed to over here, and those all everything is meticulous and it all makes sense. And that's great. That's great advice. And
Mhm.
the other thing I was going to ask you as an actress, because this is something that I've never acted. I've directed, but and never acted. But one of the things that I've talked to several actors about is, the ability. And normally they learn this in, I guess, acting class, but to let themselves go as if like be goofy or be whatever, and let yourself be whoever the character is, and not worrying about whoever's watching you thinking, oh, this that looks silly or whatever. So they kind of let themselves kind of go into that character, not worrying or caring how they look or what people think of them. I don't know the process, but I mean that sounds to me like if a lot of people can't, if they can't break through that piece and become that person, I think that's part of the success of an actor, is to be that person and not care what anybody else, almost like dance with like nobody's watching, right? I mean, that kind of mentality. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I will be honest, that was hard for me. I tended to be a more self-conscious person, especially, remember these Capricorn, old soul, and culturally, more concerned with, okay, appearance. So it was hard for me to learn how to kind of just break free. But, when you're an actor, you are in service of your character. You are your character's biggest champion. So you have to serve them the best possible way and be this open vessel, this raw almost nerve, so that you can inhabit their world,
Right.
their being, and to tell this story. So luckily for me, it's so funny, when I went to NYU, you're put into different studios, and I was in the experimental theater wing of NYU, which was probably the best thing for me as
Sure.
somebody who's maybe a little bit more shy and reserved and, oh my God, how do I look and what have you. Whereas then you go to the experimental, which is the complete opposite, where you look as crazy as you can and you're rolling around on the ground and you're doing some things that are just like, yeah, what is this? But that was good for me
Yeah.
be able to open up and be a little more raw and open to being somebody else
Right. Yeah,
character.
that's great. That's great. The other thing I wanted to ask you is a dream role. Is there any dream role out there that you've always wanted to play?
Oh, goodness. Dream roles. Yes. So funny enough, in the movie, the Bob Marley movie that I just did, and I got to meet the woman who I played, right? And we've become close
Wow,
now. Yeah.
great.
And let me tell you, she is one dynamic individual that when I sat with her and she was just telling me stories, she is so unassuming, but has this presence like you cannot believe. And I just remember saying to her, Auntie, people need to know your story
Yeah,
and your place in history, you know? So I became a little obsessed.
I can understand that.
little
Yeah.
obsessed a little obsessed with her. I always find myself very much drawn to these characters who are like fighters for the cause and championing the marginalized or the
Yeah.
forgotten.
Me too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've always found myself drawn to that. Like, for example, who would be somebody like if I oh, wow. I remember doing a little course. It was like a class that I did with this one teacher, and I realized, oh, I really like these types of characters. The people who kind of stand up and say, no, and they're unapologetically themselves, and they're messy, they're not saints,
Right.
but
Exactly.
they fight for something that's a right,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So, like for example, like I don't know if you know the character of Fela Kuti.
I don't.
There was a Broadway musical about his life, and look up his music.
I will.
Um, yeah, very complex man, by no means a saint, but there was just something about him that you're like he fought to push the norms of what expectations and unapologetically himself. Um, Funny enough, I know it's controversial for some, but like I even see it in the character Evita,
Hmm.
right?
All right. Right.
It's like, for some she was a saint, some she was like Satan, but there was just some, she spoke for the common man, even though some people say didn't feel she did, but whatever.
Yeah.
But I like those kinds of 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 characters,
Right.
like I'm
Right.
really drawn to. I even see them in like sci-fi and things like that. Yeah, I'm very much that kind of, I guess, warrior, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. And that can manifest in many ways,
Right.
right?
Right.
So yeah, you'd be surprised how that comes out. And we see it. Like we see it especially in a lot of like science fiction things where,
Right.
different worlds where people are, it may not be the same thing as like a revolution of,
Yeah.
name your country and time period, but you get the same gist.
Right. 100%. When it's all said and done, Sandra, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to leave behind when people think of your name?
Wow, that's a very deep question, Dave. Um, well, as far as my work as an actor, I'll start with that. I hope that people would be able to look at my work and see themselves, meaning I hope they see a person who found who they were, right? And didn't try to be anything else.
Right.
Um, look, in your younger years when you're trying to just, figure out, especially in this business, sometimes you try to put on a lot of hats to be like, what is it that they want me to be? What is it that I'm supposed to be so that I'm more attractive to be cast or what have you? And it's taken me many years and of just being like, you know what? I'm okay just being me, right? Just being me, and those who like it, and those who don't. I read something that said I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I'm somebody's cup of coffee, so that's fine.
Absolutely. That's a great
Work-wise,
saying.
I hope, somebody were to look at my work and be like, she was real to her character. She was true, because that's all we want to do when we're acting. We want to be that character. We want to be real. We want to be truthful to the work. And I hope people see that and feel moved. I hope so. As far as a human being standpoint, in an even bigger context of that question that you posed, which is really great, I'm by no means a perfect person, but I hope that anybody at some point in the future would say, she had good character.
Yeah.
She had good character. She had good character, and how that manifests is, like in whatever the ways that it does. I mean, I've always said this: if the main thing that I hope to leave as my legacy is that my children feel that I was a good mother, because if my kids are not happy, then I don't care about anything else.
Yeah, I hear you.
Awards, red carpets, anything else be damned. That is my ultimate legacy, is having happy children.
Absolutely. Well, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Great legacy. And Sundra, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Really appreciate your time. Great work over the decades. And I just much success to you in your future. Anything else you have coming up, you're always welcome back on the show to talk about, and or just to talk. I just appreciate your time, and thank you again.
Oh, I thank you so much for having me. Really honored.